pretty well. It's looking pretty good. Done about 18 kilometres past Tumut, or from the start this morning, in an hour 40, so travelling along pretty well. A paddling speed of about 11 kilometres an hour. That's compared to 6 kilometres an hour up on the dams on the flat water. It's twisting its way down the valley, but it's not doubling back on itself as much as it was above Tumut, so there's more purpose to where it's heading. We're still in the hills, so there's plenty of interest around each bend to see what's coming up, and some very scenic hills. I was a lot more relaxed this time. The first section up in the mountains where we had to do the portages around the dams, there was a fair bit of logistics and worry and hassle about having that trolley on the kayak, and I'm really glad I did. But it just had that extra bit of hassle to organise. Whereas this second section, it's just pretty well paddling. I didn't even take the trolley this time. I'd be able to just paddle from one section to the next each day, pull up beside the river and camp. So it was simpler, and I was more relaxed. I was a bit more sorted after the first few days. I had a bit less gear, but I was still really comfortable, happy with what I had. You know, I've so much enjoyed paddling on the Tumut River. It's a lot of fun. It's a beautiful river, beautiful setting. The river slowed down a little bit just after Tumut, but heading in here to Brungle, it picked up again. So it's been really quick for the last few kilometres, and it really is moving along. The morning of day 2 of the second leg of my paddle, which is day 5 overall. I'm at Brungle Bridge campsite. Yesterday I paddled from Tumut down here to Brungle. It was a fairly quick paddle, quick because of the river. You can see how quickly it is. The water's just scooting along here. So today, a reasonably long day, 64 kilometres paddling if I stick to the schedule. So we'll get going this morning, get down there and enjoy getting onto the Murrumbidgee. We're into a lot of farmland now, so definitely out of the mountains into the hills. Just went past the first flock of sheep, plenty of cows. Moo! And the river's just started to get a little murky. And it's still flowing pretty quickly. About 3 kilometres from the Murrumbidgee River, so we'll be there pretty quickly. Just before finishing the Tumut River, I thought I'd put up my drone and get a last couple of shots. Managed to hit a snag, hit a log, which tipped me over. And unfortunately, I've got the drone controller sitting on my lap. It's which is where it is when I'm using the drone in the kayak, and it's gone straight into the drink. So the controller's fully immersed in water and the drone has gone missing as a result. I madly tried to empty the kayak full of the water, so it's full of water at this stage, so empty it out, then paddle back upstream, but there was no drone to be found, so it was a bit disappointing, but these things happen. I won't make that mistake again. My hat's missing, but unfortunately that's not the only thing. I've just bloody lost the drone, and I'm just at the junction of the Murrumbidgee. The nature of the two rivers, they're quite different. So the Murrumbidgee's a lot more relaxed and slower. It's wider and easier to paddle. Now I don't want to go in the drink again. So that's the Tumut. I've just come down and we're just joined in to the Murrumbidgee, the mighty Murrumbidgee. But I have to really paddle now, so now it's all about paddling for progress. So we made it to Gundagai, considered to be one of the worst natural disasters in European history in Australia. The floods in Gundagai in 1853, where the town of Gundagai was about 250 people in population. It was a crossing point for the Murrumbidgee, and there was a major and massive flood came through, and 80 people lost their lives in the flood. As well, there's a really impressive story of two Aboriginal men that saved about another third of the town, about 80 people, by pulling them out of the floodwaters on bark canoes. They've erected a statue in the town of Gundagai to Yarri and Jackie, the two Aboriginal guys that rescued 80 people. So an amazing feat of bravery. Apparently the town, European settlers had settled fairly low on the flats around the river and hadn't experienced a flood that big before. So the town basically shifted up onto a hill on the side of the hill at Gundagai, so they realised the mistake of where they'd originally located the town. But it's a fascinating story. It's one worth looking up, the bravery of these two guys. A third of the population of a town, it's unbelievable. The last flood for towns like Gundagai and Wagga and Tumut, luckily there wasn't too much devastation and loss, and the town sort of learnt to live with and deal with the cycles of the river. So at Limekilns Reserve, 27 kilometres downstream from Gundagai. It's a travelling stock reserve. It was very quiet here last night in terms of I had the place to myself. However, it wasn't very quiet in terms of the weather. 12:30 last night, there was a fantastic thunder and lightning storm went through. At about 5:30 this morning, the rain started, decent bit of rain. Now the wind has picked up, so there could be a little bit of a problem. We'll see how we go. It's a northwesterly turning to a southwesterly, so that'll be basically in my face paddling, which from an effort point of view makes it harder to paddle, but stability wise it's sort of best from that direction rather than side on. Get packed up and get on the windy river. See you downstream. About the second day I started to get in my head that I could push on and get back to Wagga quicker, finish it in 3 days. Sort of been in the kayak a fair amount of time and starting to feel a bit uncomfortable, and my immediate reaction to that is say, okay, well let's push this out and get it over and done with. One of the things I want to experience with this trip is being able to slow down and simplify. I realised that I was sort of falling into the trap of going against what I was trying to do with the paddle in terms of experiencing the river a lot more. So once I realised what I was doing, I thought, right, let's just slow down and stick with the schedule that I had. I would not normally go out and say, oh, there's 50k gales blowing, let's go out for a paddle. It's the sort of thing you just don't do. But because, you know, I had no real choice, I learned a lot about how the kayak travels in windy weather and how I cope with it, which was fine. I quite enjoyed it. But I'm really glad I got to experience that without fretting and being stressed that it was slowing me down and I had a huge day paddling. So it just meant that I could enjoy the experience of being in some challenging weather rather than just stressing about how that was going to make, you know, a really big day fairly miserable. In the end, it wasn't a miserable day, it was a really enjoyable day. Today's paddle is down in Tawagga Beach, 54 kilometres today. I'm at Green's Flat Reserve, Stock Reserve. You could see it's a bit of a cooler morning, really scenic with the mist coming off the river. So much different to yesterday, so I'll get moving and warm up a bit from the cool morning and enjoy the last day of this section. So the story this morning is I've seen a snake. I think it was a brown snake. Not sure if you can see that. I don't think it jumped on the back, I bloody hope not. Today's paddle finishing in Wagga's a long part of the river that I paddle very often, particularly here with the kayak and canoe club in Wagga. We paddle up and down the Murrumbidgee a lot. So it was nice to know where I was. It was a decent sized paddle today, 53 kilometres, so that's a fairly honest day's paddle coming down the river. I think I've noticed over the last 5 years there's a bit more attention in the towns being placed on the rivers. It's really good to see the towns sort of starting to realise and make use of the river as an asset. Somewhere like Wagga here, there's been a lot of development occur recently with a riverside reserve area that's expanding and bringing more and more people down to the river, which I think is really good. So I do think it's really healthy for towns to be able to make the most of their natural assets, and the river is one of those things. The flooding, whilst it's caused a lot of damage and grief for a lot of people and caused a lot of loss, at the same time it's a reminder that we can't control everything. So I learnt something about that and probably experienced it a lot differently than what I would have done if I was rushing and dealing with weather and wind and all sorts of things. So a lot more relaxed and enjoyable, I think, overall. There we are, pulling up to the Wagga Beach. 190 k's from Tumut to Wagga. We've dropped an altitude of 125 metres in the river height. Feels good to have done that leg, so all up that's how we can go down to Wagga. He's pretty happy about. And the next leg to come from Wagga down to the Murray River, so it's 900 k's, that will be the long one. And really interesting, haven't been down that part of the river, so looking forward to that. But for now, here we are back at home at Wagga Beach with the second stage done. There we go.